Good morning, happy Monday, and happy Vlogmas. This morning, I wanted to share a little bit about what I do specifically on Mondays to help with just a little bit of work stress. So Mondays, just like every other day, I wake up, I have a kid, I gotta get her to school, but oh my gosh. I think she's eating my plants. She follows me everywhere. But the special thing about Mondays is that Mondays is when I answer all of my email-based clients' emails. So they check in with me, they send me an email update, information on their chart, information on how they're feeling, things that are going well, things that are difficult. They send all of that to me on between Friday and Sunday, and I always reply on Mondays. And then any other time that they need throughout the week, but like that's the official, like this is when we're checking in, this is when I'm making changes to your recovery protocol. But the thing is that, like, depending on the time of year and the season, like I might have more clients or less, and I only take about I think I can handle a max of like 6 or 7 email-based clients for one day of work. And if I do any more, I probably would need to add a second day, and I just don't know if that's like the best move. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's when I have calls with, like, video calls with clients who I work with face to face. So Mondays, that's the day, and it can be kind of overwhelming. It's a lot of emails, it's a lot to read, it's a lot to write. It's very therapeutic, and I actually enjoy it, and I get a lot of ideas and content out of the act of having to write about it. But it can be stressful just to be like, oh, I've got to get that done and this done and all these things done. And so my little tip for managing work stress in that kind of way, right? Like, oh, I have to get this done, and I also want to achieve all these other things, is to remove all of the other things. Yeah. So as soon as I was like, okay, I'm going to if the only thing I do today is these check-ins, it's a win. That's all I need to do. If I'm finished and I have free time, then and only then can I think about what I would maybe like to do. So I actually have a planner that helps me choose the one thing. I'll show you a little bit of that and kind of my day. On our way to my office, but this is just a DIY project I've been working on, that I'm building some cabinets that will take my kitchen cabinets from here to the ceiling. I don't have any lights on, I'm sorry. And I'm building a range hood to go over this. So this is just a cheap, like, under cabinet range hood, but I want to make it look like an expensive one. So stay tuned for that. I'm doing a whole other video on it, but we're just on the way to my office, so I wanted to share it. Hey, it feels very dark in this corner because it's so gloomy outside that there's no natural light today. I've done a bunch of check-ins, taking a quick break just to, like, get this Vlogmas thing happening, but I also have client questions. So many client questions. You guys are submitting them, and I'm loving it. And I am trying my absolute best to answer every single one. So I have a few here in email. Here's one that came in for Saturday. Okay. Alicia, hey there. I may be recovering from HA and I have a question. I've had 4 recovery periods that have been 19 to 20 days apart. Is it normal to have short cycles at the beginning of recovery? This is a super common question. Oh, you guys are really far away from me now. Okay. In 2013 to 2014, I lost 68 pounds and was the skinniest I've ever been. I did this through diet and exercise. I picked up running and began running half and full marathons and continued to eat low calorie following the Weight Watchers program. I also had a very stressful job at the time as well. In 2018, my periods, which were very predictable, almost always 32 days apart, became erratic. My periods would sometimes come 2 months apart and sometimes 2 weeks apart. By October 2018, I almost completely lost my period. Between 2018 and 2022, I may have had 5 periods in those 4 years, and some were medically induced with hormones. So let's count that as none. I went to the doctor and was diagnosed with PCOS, but after reading the period repair manual, I started to question the diagnosis. I learned more about HA and thought perhaps the combination of diet, exercise, and stress might have caused my lack of period. In 2021, I left my high-stress job but continued restricting food and exercising. I started doing the work but didn't go all in until August 2022. By August, I made resting a priority, completely stopped restricting food, and took a break from running. I got a period in September, followed by 3 more periods spaced 19 days apart between the first 2 periods, and then 20 days apart with the last one. My periods have been light and long. I've always had long, heavy periods since my periods started at age 9. I'm curious if this is normal at the beginning of recovery. Okay, so Alicia, yeah, it's normal. It's normal for your period to not be perfect right away. So absolutely expect that you're gonna go a few periods where ovulation is far apart, where luteal phases are shorter, and then just systematically work through them. Now, what I always recommend, and I feel like a broken record sometimes, but just make sure you have a timeline in mind that is short and realistic for how long you're gonna go before you take action. This means that this means like 3-4 cycles, 3-4 months, right? So I just recorded the story about my postpartum story. It's gonna come out on Friday, but in it I share how I set a date for myself, right? That like, okay, if my postpartum period hadn't returned with the 0 changes that I'm making to my lifestyle right now, then at 6 weeks, I have to review. So you could do every 6 weeks or something like that. And that's how I work with my clients too. I create timelines that I think are reasonable based on their health history and what they're going for as to how long we're gonna stay consistent with this plan that we've got going on. And then, you know, what changes, what interventions will we do next? So that's kind of what I recommend, is that you keep working towards getting them to be within the healthy cycle parameters. And if they continue, you need to make some changes. That's that. Certainly, I see how the PCOS thing happened for you with your far apart periods. It doesn't sound like you ever really lost your cycle. And I think that this is a lot more common than you think. It's just that people just kind of identify with like, oh, my cycles are just far apart, right? If you're cycling in general, you are significantly less likely to identify that there is a problem than if you're like us, where your cycle completely disappears. But the mechanisms of what's happening, if it's due to stress, diet, and exercise, is still exactly the same. You just have a higher tolerance for stress. Your body is just still able to produce some kind of hormone function and make reproductive hormones at a higher intensity of stress. It's just like you might be heading towards HA, but it will take you longer to get there. But because you're having some of them, it's harder to recognize.
But absolutely, you're on the right track. It's really cool that you figured it out, right? That like you were having cycle issues without just being like, oh no, this is just me. But yeah, just make a plan, a timeline plan, make specific changes, follow those changes for the amount of time on your plan, challenge yourself, and if you haven't seen the improvement that you're looking for within 6 weeks, or whatever your time frame is, it's time to make the next change, which for you might be reviewing, right? You said you're all in, but maybe just reviewing what your all in looks like. You know, where are you getting your nutrients from? What's your meal timing look like? Are there still food rules, or perhaps some behaviors that you're doing? Again, I feel like I'm plugging this a lot, but like this, I created the period recovery game plan for all of the people asking questions like this. That game planner, the point is to go through it and interview, like ask yourself, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? Yes, no, yes, no. It's going to help bring to light like where your blind spots might be, because you really might think you're all in, or you really might think you're doing all the things you need to, but then you come up against something on the checklist, for example, in the planner, and you're like, oh, I might not be doing that, or I might still be holding on to that behavior that's not serving me. So I recommend that. I'll put it in the show notes below. And yeah, Alicia, I hope this helps. Thank you so much for your question. Everyone, thank you for your question. If you have one for the show, email me, danny@thehasociety.com, comment below, or send me something on Instagram. I check all of those areas, so your question shall be answered. I'll see you guys tomorrow on Tuesday for Tuesday's Vlogmas.